Okay, YouTube, Todd here again, some guitar guy. First off, and as always, thanks for watching. So, another video, and today I want to talk about this bike. This is a Harley Sportster, an '02 Harley Sportster 883R, and specifically why I think, at least for me, it is the perfect motorcycle on the best motorcycle on the planet. So of course, that's entirely subjective and based on our personal experiences and opinions. And in this first part, this will be a two-part series. We're going to look at what has helped shape that. So basically, my motorcycling history. So, a little bit about the R before we do that. And even before we do that, I have to give credit where credit's due for inspiration. Fort Nine, he is a Canadian biker, YouTuber, and does really I haven't watched all of his videos, but every video I've seen, top quality content with kind of a sarcastic sense of humor. And really breaks things down. But he did a video a couple of years ago on why so many millions ride Harley-Davidson bikes in general, not just Sportsters, but any Harley. Even though they do seem to be, I don't know, antiquated in style and sound and, kind of loud and vibraty and all that kind of stuff. But and that's kind of the point. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and what some find old and I don't know, just unattractive, others find particularly beautiful. But he mentions, and he almost kind of glosses over this fact or this point of the time capsule, and that turns out to be a huge factor with me being a history nut and among other things. But yeah, I really do like that, and the built-in, it just oozes nostalgia from a time gone by. So he was an inspiration, and then two UK biker YouTubers, Stuart Fillingham and Chris of the OT. Stewart did a video a couple of months ago making the argument that the lowly roadster of any manufacturer is the uh, best bike on the planet because of its versatility, or naked bike, or standard, or whatever you want to call it. And the R in this bike actually stands for roadster, not racing, as you might think. But so, yeah, that was an inspiration. And then once I had the idea and kind of started working on this video or these videos, I found Chris of the OT who did a 10 or 12 video series on the in-depth history of the Sportster, and I'll link those in the description. But and from a British and world perspective, so he sprinkles in world, or didn't sprinkle it in, but it's set in world context. So great YouTubers all the way, and show them some YouTube love, if you will. So back to the 883R, initially offered only on the 883, not its 1200 larger displacement sister in '02 and '03. And they were only available in this paint scheme. And I'm leaving it up there for a minute just to kind of let you see where your eyes are drawn if you haven't figured that out. Yeah, it's right here. And the design team, I think, did an excellent job of that blacking almost everything else out. Very little chrome. What chrome there is contrasted nicely with the blacked out engine. So yeah, your eyes drawn here, and we'll zoom in a bit. This checkered flag pattern, which is reinforced here on the breather, and it's hard to see in real life too. But even down here on the ignition cover, so kind of this T and we'll zoom back out just a little bit. So this is Harley's, or this was Harley Corporate's tip of the hat to their racers and race teams and their dominance in AMA racing of years past. And I think that's really cool when any manufacturer does that. It also sports a little bit higher ground clearance. I think the seat height may be basically the same with the other models, but higher ground clearance, which gives you better lean angles. And then this performance-wise, this factory 2-in-1 exhaust. I did read on one source that Harley did some internal massaging, but I mean, this is a 54 cubic inch engine that's already putting out right around 54 horsepower. There's not really a lot of room left. And I've only read that from one source, and there was no data really to back that up, and it didn't say what if anything they did. So I'm guessing it was only this 2-in-1, and maybe that netted, at redline, a half horsepower or something. But anyway, and to kind of start going backwards, then we're going to go way back. Before I bought the bike I have now, based on my previous experiences, I thought that an 883 Sportster in general was the perfect bike. Any 883 Evo. This is the Evo engine. And then I kind of focused in on the 03 anniversary edition, which I didn't put a slide up for. It's not the blacked out engine, but it did have the black and gray paint scheme with some badging, basically the same as any other 03 883, just with some badging. And that's when I ran across a few of these girls for sale in my searches. Now, sadly, initially I could not afford a sporty, so I ended up with a Suzuki Boulevard S40, which we'll get to. Then a 96 883 Hugger, which I've sold both of those, and now I do, proud to say, own an 02 883R. But let's kind of get off that slide for a bit. So the R is based on this girl, and this is one of the I'm sure it struck fear in the heart of non-Harley XR 750 riders of the day. And she looks fast, light. That's a 750cc engine, but it looks, like a 1200 crammed in that frame. But yeah, they dominated the dirt tracks of the day. And maybe not a lot of visual cues, but clearly the color, the general paint scheme, and a lot of blacked out treatments. At least the exhaust is opposite. But yeah, so that's where the R's, that's who she's tipping her hat to. So let's go kind of personally. So I grew up here in the States, in the South, and this, like a lot of motorcyclists, was my very first motorcycle, a Honda Z50. I'm not sure the history of this bike, and I think they still make it. But a bulletproof little mini bike motorcycle. I say motorcycle because it actually had gears. 3, if I remember, with an automatic clutch. So all the rider has to do is roll off the throttle, the clutch engages, you make the shift, and then roll back on the power. I guess it was one down and 2 up, but it seems like maybe it was something weird, like all down or all up or something like that. I don't remember. I was probably second or third grade when I got this, and this is what kids did. We had go-karts, mini bikes, dirt bikes. Some kids, the fortunate ones, had 2 of the 3 or all 3. We had big yards in the subdivision I grew up in, like, I don't know, probably close to an acre, all lined up. You could stand in the backyard or the front yard and look up and down the street, and there was a little hill and a curve, but you could see most of the neighborhood. And yeah, kind of feel sorry for the parents now because that's what after school and summers was: kids tearing up and down the you know theirs and their neighbors' yards. But really love this, and I wish I could find the picture. It's somewhere of me, little me, 7, 8 years old, in wearing a denim jacket, blue jeans, a big white bell, open-faced helmet, and I think I'm giving a thumbs up or something. But I'll try to find that picture. But yeah, very proud of that bike. Even read the owner's manual, which I snuck into school and hid in a book during my class. So my second bike was a hand-me-down from an older cousin, a Suzuki TS75. This was my first two-cycle bike. Beautiful little bike, trail and street. So with the long travel suspension and high fenders and flat bar, but also with it was street legal. Now I was not street legal at 10 years old, but we moved. Got this bike around 10 or 11, and the same. It wasn't a subdivision, but just more of I guess, a neighborhood on a country road. All the neighbors had a wooded lot in the backyard. So yeah, we would cut trails and then tear them up with our dirt bikes, and that was kind of growing up in the 70s. So on into the 80s, mid 80s, we learned to drive and start dating and all that kind of stuff. And I think I bought these are not my bikes. These are, by the way, these are internet images that sadly I don't, other than that one of me on that Z50, I don't think I have. Well, no, I take that back. I think I do have one of me somewhere popping a wheelie on that Suzuki, but just not a lot of pictures back in the day. But anyway, graduate high school at 18 and 84, and either 84 85, I found this girl as my first street bike. And this is a early 80s Kawasaki 440 LTD. Now it would later morph into the more cruiser-esque 454 LTD, but this is the one I prefer. This is the original, kind of the just standard kind of high handlebars, the upright seating position, mid controls, and this was belt driven. I'm not sure we can tell. That almost looks like a chain, but the one I had was belt driven. A little twin, a little parallel twin, inline twin. Very smooth, just like the other bikes. Very smooth, very predictable. The transmission, the same, everything the same. Very balanced machine, very precise, and almost like just a bigger and bigger sewing machine engine under you, powering the bike. And then I would sell that bike in a year or two later. So maybe I'm around 1920. I found a Yamaha Maxim 400, very much like this bike. It was black. Looks like someone's recovered the seat. Maybe didn't do the best job, but again, just become totally accustomed and really, I guess, taken for granted the precision of the engineering and the transmission and the engine itself. And here we're probably talking, we're talking a 400cc engine, so half the size of the Sportster 883, and only missing the horsepower by maybe 10. So I mean, they're doing a lot with this engine, and at much higher revs. But a joy to ride, fun little bike. Both of these could go 2-up. They weren't the happiest bikes 2-up, but you could go 2-up, across town or something if you wanted. But great little bikes. Now, fast forwarding on a couple of years to say This is probably 89, I believe. Um, this was my first and really only sport bike. Sport bikes, had made their appearance. This was a not forget the year, early, no, probably mid '80s Honda Hurricane 600. They came in two flavors, the 600 and the 1000. It's the CBR 600, but they were called Hurricanes. And I was kind of tickled to find this picture because this is the paint scheme I had with the charcoal gray, with the bright red accents on the tank and the stripe and the wheels. I had the matching helmet. Um, this and the Ninjas, the Hurricanes and the Ninjas were the big kids on the block, the kings or queens of the sport bike genre. And this thing, I'm telling you, was crazy fast. This is the fastest machine I've ever operated, and never had it to wide open throttle. Just didn't have the balls in any gear, because even in sixth gear at low speed, and it didn't take long for that engine to start spinning up. It had the power, and the look and the attitude. And again, I mean, a lot more power generated out of these 600 cc's, but just sewing machine precision really in everything about the bike, but particularly the engine and transmission. And during this time, I had a work buddy. Of course, now I'm working full time, and I had a work buddy who rode, but he was a Harley guy. And he, would kind of kid me about the rice burner, and, you ought to ride a real motorcycle. And he was selling his bike, and he kept kind of goading me into coming over and giving it a test ride. So this is a 1982, best we can tell. He has no pictures of it either. Sportster. Unclear on the designation. They offered, I think they even offered XR 1000 that year, but it's an old Ironhead Sportster. It was this same kind of cherry red, whatever Harley called it. I don't think mine had this black inset on the tank, but just kind of a common run of the mill Sportster of the day that he had bought new straight out of high school, and was getting rid of it. So, and of course, this is post AMF days, but the AMF gremlins were still, were still around. Particularly for this bike was the electrical system. I think still a generator would overcharge the battery. The battery would boil over and soak the padding on the underside of the seat. And then this rear plug, the rear cylinder plug, would just arbitrarily foul. You might ride it 3 or 4 times and it's fine, and then that 4th or 5th time you can't get it out of the driveway because now it's only running on one cylinder. And I chased these gremlins myself, and I had a shop chase them, and we never could come to any kind of couldn't rectify them, and ended up selling the bike. But that's the hate part. This was very much a love-hate relationship, maybe the strongest love-hate relationship I've ever had. But so I go over, kind of back up a little bit before I knew all this, and see the bike. And I mean, it's a pretty bike. It's really, it's been done. There are ugly motorcycles, but this is certainly not one of them. It's a pretty bike. All the parts are there, 2 wheels, an engine and transmission, and chain, a 4-speed gearbox. I thought that was a little quaint, where they would change to a 5-speed, but 4-speed gearbox. The handlebars, the controls, everything's there that I'm familiar with. So I swung a leg over it, and took the weight off the stand, and the first impression was the weight. I mean, this is a much heavier bike, probably 100, maybe 150 pounds heavier than the Hurricane. but the heaviest bike I had ridden at the time. And kind of feel the hands on the grips and get a feel for them, and foot on one peg, foot on the other peg, kind of trying to build a little bit of muscle memory. And I go to operate the clutch, and this is a cable clutch. Here's the cable going down. We can't see the other side, but it goes down into the primary on the other side. And am really kind of impressed by the effort. This is not hydraulic. You're not going to operate it with two fingers, or at least I'm not. So it took some effort. And, this is a liter bike. This is 1,000 cc's. And everything, it felt substantial. Girthy, maybe. And, I didn't have it running yet, but already, just with the clutch, it felt... I don't know, industrial, agricultural, substantial. And then same with the brakes. The brakes are hydraulic, and they're light to operate. But so I thumbed the starter, and for the first time, the phrase is, the bike or the car or whatever with an engine, quote unquote, comes alive. This one did, and that's what struck me. Because you can feel almost everything, the push rods, the valves, the cams turning, the engine itself, the pistons going up and down in their bores. It really epitomized to me what iron horse meant, because it's like I just woke up the iron horse. And of course, the mirrors are useless, and Harleys do vibrate at idle, and Fortnite makes an excellent point of that, but it's actually a fore and aft vibration. Up and down in the cylinder is balanced, but the counterbalancer doesn't balance for the fore and aft, and that's actually what you feel. But still, you're sitting on the bike, especially being used to, Hondas and Yamahas and Kawasaki's, etc., with that smooth sewing machine like precision of the engine. And this girl feels like you've woken her up from a nap, and she's ready to go. Let's go. So I pull in the clutch, bottom of the clutch, clunk it into gear, and you can tell there's some substantial parts in that transmission. And then just a little bit of throttle and start slipping the clutch to get her to go. And most of that vibration disappears, because that's the engineering. It's designed to go. Now at idle, yeah, you're going to experience that, and you're still going to feel some. It's not like it's now, you're riding a gold wing or something. You're still going to feel some of that engine, because it's rotating, right? You're still going to feel some of that engine through through your feet and your hands and your butt, but it is greatly, greatly reduced. So I take off and do a 5 or 10 minute ride, maybe 15 around his house. And the time capsule thing really strikes me during that first ride, that me riding whatever day that was in 1988, 89, maybe even 1990, was not very far removed at all if I went back in time, say to the 60s. It really wasn't. Or if a rider from the 60s, transported to, current time during, whatever date that was, and rode this bike, both bikes would have a whole lot more in common than they had differences. So, yeah, I came back, and like I said, I told him I'd take it, no questions. And yeah. Now, the other thing that struck me while owning the bike and riding the bike around, just, putting around on the back roads, the kind of riding in a time capsule, enjoying all that, but the public, the non-motorcycling public's reaction to the bike. And it didn't matter where I went, what socioeconomic class, or if it was a white area, black area, both. People stopped what they were doing. A lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people stopped what they were doing, mowing the grass, washing the car, kids playing in the yard, old people on the porch, and would at least look, but most of them would acknowledge with a wave or a nod of the head or something along those lines. It was almost like a little mini parade for this bike. Now, everything's a two-edged sword, so this is like in heaven, but then the plug would foul or the battery would boil over, and I ended up just really getting super frustrated with it after spending way too much money trying to fix it in time, and sold it, and would end up with this bike, which I have to give honorable mention to. It was for sale. Like I said before, all these are just internet images. Um, and in some ways, in a lot of ways, this is an opposite to the Harley, but this is a trying to, be true to myself and tell the story accurately. This was a Yamaha only made this 2 years, like 84 and 5 or 85 and 6. It was a stablemate. It was called a Maxim, but called the Maxim X. It had a completely different engine, I think, from their sport bikes, which was water cooled, 5 valves per cylinder compared to 4. And this was a little sleeper. I don't know what you would call it. It's a standard in a way, but then you have a little bit of rake here in the fork, a little bit of extra rake. So standard cruiser, standard power cruiser, sleeper. And I guess it just didn't sell well enough, and Yamaha pulled it, and the Japanese will do that in a heartbeat. But this thing was big enough. It's not the ideal touring bike, but it could tour. Maybe not the ideal commuter. It's a little big for that, but definitely plenty of power. And if you just wanted a sleeper to, catch some of the faster bikes off guard at a red light, this one would do it. This one was, that's quite a little power plant, and it was shaft driven and water cooled. So um, definitely honorable mention. And I actually looked for these. I think I found one, but it was way too far off. And I'm happy with what I own now. So let's go to the next slide. So, in fast forwarding again, I looked for the Maxim. I really couldn't afford a Sportster when I got back into motorcycling, and this is almost the exact bike. I do have some videos of this bike, of the S40 I owned up. This is almost the exact, and I probably have some pictures on another. Well, I know I do on another drive. Too lazy to pull them up. But this was a 2006 S40. Started life back in the 80s as the Savage, the big single, 650 cc's belt drive. They originally came with 4-speed trannies like the Sportster, so the Sportsters clearly impacted this bike, but a little bit more raked out front end, so maybe more like I don't know, a Super Glide, but then a totally different engine and transmission and all, and about 100, easily 100 pounds lighter, very low seat height. Great bike to get back into motorcycling. It was close. It was within my budget, and with the rod exhaust, it really does sound good. And then while I have that bike, and I know I have some pictures of Lucille, and I have some videos up too of her, but I found a 96 883 Hugger, and it was close in my price range, relatively stock. And so I bought her, ended up putting some wide white walls front and back. I had the tank. I had to order a new tank, and bigger tank, had it painted, and she really looked good. But there was just something else missing, I guess. I really didn't want or need a hugger. You know, I'm not tall, but I'm not short. And I kept looking and kept looking, especially after I sold both and didn't have anything. And again, borrowing these pictures. And this is probably a good place to stop. Um, started finding a few of these 883Rs, and fortunately, I found one that was close, relatively stock, and in my price range. And yeah, that's what I own now. Um, Now these bikes, these were offered all the way up into the 20 teens in different displacements and with different paint schemes. So you didn't have to get the Harley Racing Orange. But the originals, the 02 or 03 was really what I wanted. Carbureted, solid mount. Um, so yeah, I'll pick up the story. We'll take a little closer look at the 883R in the next video. So thanks again for watching. Please remember to do the YouTube thing and look for part 2 coming soon. Thanks, guys.